Hello and welcome to day one of your ClickUp mini course. Today we'll introduce how to set yourself up in ClickUp. We'll start off with the very basics, like picking your plan, setting up your first workspace, configuring your profile, and inviting people to ClickUp. Then we'll move on to very basic ClickUp features like ClickApps, notification settings, and the discovery of the user interface. Let's start with picking the right plan. The free plan is targeted at solopreneurs and small business owners who want to explore ClickUp before picking a plan that's more fitted to their need. Basically, you can manage a small project, have a to-do list, have a few views. ClickUp really starts to be interesting at the unlimited plan, which is, in my opinion, the best value for money. The unlimited plan allows you to unlock the features that are custom fields and automations. And these two features are quite essential to ClickUp. If you're a small company and you don't have any constraints, the unlimited plan is all you need. Moving on to the business plan. The business plan allows you to make use of features like Google SSO. So if your company has the constraint to use Google single sign-on, it's a no-brainer. You have to go for it. And two other very important features that are in the business plan are sprints. If you're working in Agile, you have to go for the business plan, and workload management and time tracking. There are certain views targeted at how to manage your team's capacity that are only available in the business plan. If you start to track in a very fine way your time, you'll have to go with the business plan. And then enterprise, which is targeted as large companies and allows you to do things like using specific options. If you have security constraints, you'll have to go for the enterprise plans, and most of the large companies have those. And another important aspect of the enterprise plan is that you will have a dedicated customer success manager that will be a direct point of contact in terms of support. They will be dedicated to you. The first thing you should do if you start with ClickUp is to go into your settings. If you go on the top left, there'll be an icon called settings. Click it, will be in your workspace settings. On the top left, you will have your workspace settings. And on the bottom left, you will have your own settings. Starting with your personal settings, there's a few things that you need to do. You need to customize your profile picture so that people know who they're assigning tasks to, your name, your email, and you can also enable some security features. You can pick your language depending on where you're from, your time zone, and which day is the first day of the week, the hour format and the date format, and you can customize a few settings. To start off, I advise you not to edit too many things. You can probably leave it as it is, but you can have a look at what I've turned on and probably go with something similar as well. Moving on to your workspace settings, I won't show it for privacy, but that will show all of the workspaces that you have access to. And a very important fact to understand is that a workspace lives by itself. Whatever edits you do in this workspace won't affect all of the other workspaces that you have. Sometimes I have a few clients that tell me, why am I not seeing some settings on some view in my workspace? That's probably because they created it in another workspace. And that's why it's very important to make sure that you have one single workspace if you're working for one single team. Then we'll move on to the notification settings. One thing I advise you to do is to turn off all of these first 4 notification settings. And what this does is that it doesn't put you as a watcher. You won't receive notifications unless you select it in the task settings, which we'll talk about later. But basically remove these 4 and this will totally unclutter your inbox in ClickUp. Moving on to the company settings. There's a few things you can adjust. You can invite people to your workspace. And there are 2 ways to do this. The first one is to do it from the settings. For example, I will invite someone called John at saber.com as a member. Can also decide to invite someone called James as a guest this time. And the difference between a member and a guest is that you will pay for your members. As you can see, there was a little pop-in that inviting that member was declined because I had to pay an extra seat. Whereas for guests, it's free. One rule that ClickUp has is that if the company domain is the same as your own domain, it has to be a member and you have to pay for it. If it is a different domain, it can be a guest and therefore you don't have to pay for it. I think you can have up to 5 guests per member you pay for, which is pretty generous. The only limitation with guests is that you cannot invite them to Teams, and we'll show Teams right after, and you cannot invite them to a space. They'll have to go to a folder or a list. Moving on to Teams, you can create teams, which are groups of members, and assign tasks to these teams. That's pretty convenient if you have a sales team or marketing team and you don't know which person in particular to assign a task to. If you're from IT, for example, you don't want to assign to a specific person from marketing, so assign to the marketing group, and then the marketing manager is in charge of reassigning or splitting that task into subtasks from that team. We'll talk a bit more about all of these concepts in the collaboration part, but just know that teams allow you to assign tasks to a large group of people or invite a large group of people that represent a team in your company to a folder or a list. Moving on to spaces, that's where you will see all of your company's space if you're an admin. And that will allow you to have control over the spaces that you can see, but also the spaces that you don't see. And that's quite important because very often in companies, people start to create their own spaces and it can become a mess because each one has their own private space. Moving on to a brand new feature in ClickUp, which is task types. Basically, you can create types of tasks that are not tasks because it happens very often that someone is creating a task, but it's actually not a task. It's a customer, or it's a bug, or it's an invoice. And you can actually create those here. If I click here, I can create a task that I call invoice. And in Pro, it's invoices. And I can even say invoices to be sent to clients, for example, and create task type. Moving on to import and export. And that's where you can start to do imports and exports of your tasks. If you're coming from another software, you can automatically get the data from your different softwares like Asana, Monday, Trello, Jira, etc., and pull them and bring them to ClickUp. You can also import a CSV, which is the most common way to import tasks because they could be previously in a software that is not here or in an Excel file, and that's also another way to import tasks. Moving on to ClickApps. ClickApps are features of ClickUp that you can turn on and off on demand. And that's quite convenient because you can make the workspace more or less complex on demand. And this will affect everyone's features, and this will also slightly affect the load time of ClickUp. It's quite important to know which ClickApps you really need. By default, a lot of ClickApps are turned on. What I advise is to ask yourself which ClickApps, which features of ClickUp you really need. And what you should do is turn them all off and then choose to turn on the ones that you need. Do I need AI? No, actually not. Do I need to record my screen or to allow members to record their screen to share bugs, for example? Yes, they should be able to do it. Do I need emojis and reactions? Yeah, maybe. Do I need custom fields? Yes. Do I need custom task IDs, etc., etc.? I will just give you a few ClickApps that are, to me, quite important and that any company should keep on. Automations, custom fields, and nested subtasks are actually quite important. Priorities can be useful, and you can also keep the tags, which can be useful. You can keep time tracking if you use it, etc., etc. Then we'll talk about a little bit more of the settings. There are integrations in ClickUp. I won't go into detail, but you can connect ClickUp to a lot of apps for different use cases. A very common use case is to connect it to dev apps like Git, GitHub, GitLab. Another one could be to connect it to your Google Drive if your company uses that, or Dropbox, etc. There are so many use cases, just depending on company's external softwares, turn on the ones that you need. Moving on to the email integration. which is actually quite useful if you want to send emails straight from the ClickUp comment box on a task. It is possible, and you can connect an email account both at individual level but also at company level to answer straight from tasks. It has great use cases if you want to make ClickUp a lightweight CRM or answer support questions straight from ClickUp. That's possible. You can explore that with email integrations. Next, I'm going to skip these two parts, the ClickUp API. Basically, you can connect ClickUp to another software if you're technically using their API, the billing, then moving on to the trash. With the trash, you can recover something that someone in your workspace deleted, whether it's a task, a list, a folder, any piece of concept in ClickUp can be recovered here using the trash. One thing to notice is that after 30 days, the information here gets deleted. Make sure you recover it within 30 days. Moving on to security and permissions, and that is quite an important part. If you are an admin, you have to have a look at this section, and if you're a member, you're not concerned. You can skip that if you're just a member of your workspace. But basically, as an admin, make sure that the first 3 sections are compliant to your company security settings. Just make sure that your session durations or SSO settings are compliant. There are things that you cannot control if you're not on an enterprise level, but if you are, just make sure everything's set up correctly. Then moving on to custom permissions. You can turn on and off some specific permissions for your guests and members. That is quite important because there are some things that you don't necessarily want your members to do. One thing, for example, would be to manage custom fields. Maybe members shouldn't be allowed to create custom fields. The same way, maybe members shouldn't be allowed to create views and only the admin should do it. In the enterprise plan, you can create a new role. You could create a role called manager that could manage custom fields or manage views, and that will allow the responsibility to be delegated from the admin to the manager. Moving on to the ClickUp interface. When you land on ClickUp, you will access this view. And there are 3 main components to the ClickUp workspace. The first is the taskbar on top, and that allows you to very quickly search for any task, document, or folder just by typing a keyword. Then second very important part of ClickUp is the left panel. Through that left panel, you'll access your home, your inbox, your hubs, which we'll talk about later, and your hierarchy. So talking about your home, that's where you'll see the tasks that are assigned to you and have to be done today, the ones overdue, the ones that come up next. You can also see comments assigned to you. Moving on to your inbox is where you will have any updates if someone has assigned a task to you, mentioned you recently, or basically if you've received a notification on a task you're watching. Then talking about a Docs Hub. Docs Hub is where you'll see all the documents that are in your workspace. They are not organized, but you can sort them or filter them by tag if you use tags on documents. Then moving on to dashboards, that where you'll see all the dashboards that you've created, and whiteboards, you will see all your whiteboards that you've created. And finally, the hierarchy. That's basically where you'll see all of your ClickUp spaces, folders, and lists that you have access to. Any project that lies in ClickUp and is based off tasks appears in that hierarchy on the left. And if I click on an element of the hierarchy, we'll go into details later, but you will have your views, which will appear here in the center. That's it for this intro to ClickUp. Thank you for listening to me, and see you tomorrow.